Welcome back to Facing South Florida. I'm Rudabeh Shahbazi in this week for Jim DeFeedy. The U.S. Supreme Court this week handed President Donald Trump a legal victory when the justices ruled to uphold the third iteration of his travel ban. Mr. Trump hailed the 5-4 decision.
We have to be tough, and we have to be safe, and we have to be secure. At a minimum, we have to make sure that we vet people coming into the country. We know who's coming in. We know where they're coming from. We just have to know who's coming here.
As you might imagine, this decision was not received with universal support, particularly by the people with ties to the countries targeted.
Sheena Mousavi is a first-generation American whose family moved here from Iran. She has a lot of relatives still there who want to move to the U.S., but she's afraid those dreams of life in America will not come true.
Some of them sent applications and was denied, and some of my friends and family came here on the lottery that they had, and now that's no longer going to be in effect.
Mousavi thinks the Supreme Court approved immigration policy that makes it more difficult for some from the Middle East to get approval to travel here is not fair, and it's discriminatory.
It makes people think that these countries are, full of bad people or maybe terrorists, or, that they're unwanted in a way because they're being, singled out.
I'm waiting for my fiancé to come in.
Mohammed Tofighi moved here from Iran too. He became an American citizen in 1977 and owns a store and restaurant in Plantation. He has a fiancée in Iran and has been trying for months to get a visa for her.
I just waiting the time between, they said that between 4 to 6 months. Hopefully it work it out for me because I'm a citizen. I don't know, should they have any problem to bring a fiancé here?
This newest version of the ban applies to Libya, Iran, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. It also affects North Korea, although citizens from there generally aren't allowed to travel to the U.S. anyway, and certain government officials from Venezuela and their family members. Joining me now to talk about the travel ban is Wilfredo Ruiz. He is the Communications Director for CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations. Thank you for being here. Appreciate having you.
Thank you for the invitation.
So let's talk about this. A lot of Muslims feel that this is actually a Muslim ban because President Donald Trump on the campaign trail frequently advocated for a Muslim ban and talked about a complete shutdown of Muslims coming into this country. But this is now the third iteration of the travel ban, and it includes countries that are not Muslim, like North Korea and Venezuela, predominantly Muslim, and it also excludes many countries that are Muslim countries. So how do we justify calling it a Muslim ban?
We justify calling it a Muslim ban because the president called it that way. When the president asked former Mayor Giuliani to help him in drafting this executive order, he explicitly asked Mr. Giuliani if he could turn the Muslim ban legal. So the rationale for implementing this immigration limitation that it is within the powers of the president to do. It was not the correct one. You cannot use the religious preference of a certain country or Muslim majority countries as a basis for discrimination.
But this third version, the first version did talk about religion. It expressly said that religious minorities would get preference from those Muslim countries. But this third version took out that clause.
And what we see is this insistence in the administration on cleansing this order because they want to try to clean it up from the traces it previously have, where you can evidently see it was a Muslim ban. Of course, the administration wants to disguise it because if it was open about it, it will be immediately disapproved. So it is a disguise for a Muslim ban. The government forgets to mention when in all these orders that they kept the majority Muslim countries, most of the countries mentioned still Muslim majority countries. Those countries that are not mentioned are North Korea. I don't know how many North Koreans really want to immigrate to America or apply to do so or are crossing our borders. And the Venezuelan regime government people that are affected. But what we need to keep in mind is what has really happened here. What has really happened here is, in the opinion of the 4 of the 9 judges or justices of the Supreme Court, is that we're going back 50 years to the Korematsu times. Those times where the government officially sanctioned discriminating a group of people within our nation. That in that time because of their ethnicities, this time because of their religion, to implement some kind of discriminatory immigration policies towards that group. And when we let this happen unsanctioned and unresponsive about it, it invites the government and it emboldens the government, like the government is now, to keep implementing this type of discriminatory policies, especially in immigration matters. And we see the president so emboldened that he was, in a few days ago, he even proposed to eliminate the right of immigrants to have a hearing before an immigration judge. And when we hear from the president proposals and being uncomfortable about hiring judges, when that is a duty of our nation, if we have the immigration system that we wish to have based on democracy and ethical values, if we want to keep that and keep our image as the flag bearer of democracy, then we need to welcome immigrants, and we need to wait from Central America to have a hearing before a judge. Those people that are politically prosecuted from whenever they come to have a hearing before a judge, those people running out of war and out of death to also have an opportunity and a hearing before a judge. And what we see is a president very uncomfortable for the need to hire judges.
I wanted to ask you about refugees because going back again to the first version of the travel ban, it mentioned refugees and barring all refugees. What about the argument that we have to secure the borders and that there are countries, for Syria, for example, which really doesn't have a government and can't really vet people properly and communicate with our government who has been vetted, who doesn't have a criminal history, who is safe to enter the country?
What is wrong is to have a blanket approach to all Syrians. What we should probably is implement a policy that if we cannot vet somebody, we will not let it in. That, as a matter of fact, that is the standing policy even before the Muslim ban 1, 2, 3. If our government intelligence and immigration agencies are not capable of vetting somebody, they will not let him in. And there's a false impression given by the president that we were letting people in without an extreme vetting. Those Syrians that live now in South Florida, for example, are people that have gone vetting processes, sometimes over 2 years of continuous and constant interviews, investigations, when we have multiple of our investigative agencies and law enforcement agencies involved in their vetting. That's how they made it here. And the president gives a false impression that people are coming left and right from Syria and without an extreme vetting, and that there's no way of us vetting them. That's false. We have implemented it, we continue to implement it, and our policy have always been people that we don't vet efficiently or effectively, we just don't allow them in the country.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate having you. And up next, I'll be talking to the newest member of the Miami-Dade County Commission. Keep it here.